Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes, the latest addition to the Locked On Sports Network's growing lineup of college podcasts. I'm your host, Andrew Wade, editor over at DearOldGold.com, where you can find analysis pieces on all things black and yellow, and we're bringing you an instant reaction to today's Outback Bowl. I have with me Jared Starkweather, one of my best friends and a contributor at Dear Old Gold right now, to join me to talk about today's happenings. Obviously, fantastic game. Lots of fun. I'm surprised Iowa won, and we want to give you kind of our instant reactions to that and let you know how we feel about it, what our thoughts are on the season overall, and what we kind of expect for next season. You know, with the people leaving, obviously we want to touch on Nick Easley had a fantastic senior day performance or, final game performance and stuff like that. So we're going to touch on that. Jared, thank you for joining the podcast, man. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. What a game, huh? I'm still excited about it.
Yeah, were you just watching it at home today?
I stayed home. I have the two kids, both under 3 years of age now, so it kind of makes it difficult to go anywhere fun and do something for the game. So just getting to watch it in my man cave downstairs.
It's a pretty nice man cave, but yeah, man, it was a fun game. I'm honestly surprised at how it all went down. To be honest, when the score was like 6-0, I was like, well, at some point they're gonna break it big, and Mississippi State's gonna blow this game out. It's gonna be 17-0 going into half, and Iowa's just gonna be treading water trying to survive. And then all of a sudden, you get a 75-yard touchdown pass to Nick Easley. You have a strip sack and a touchdown pass to Ihmir Smith-Marsette, and holy crap, we're at 17-6 Iowa. And then obviously going into the third quarter, I was like, okay, let's hope we can keep the momentum going. And we had those two weird turnovers. The Ihmir Smith-Marsette fumble was bizarre, to say the least. And then I was like, well, this is the end. I think a lot of fans were like, we've seen this before. We saw the Wisconsin game. We saw Penn State, Purdue. Just once it starts going downhill, when it rains, it pours for Iowa. And personally, I'm surprised to see them they're able to come back and close out the game on a strong note.
Yeah. I mean, you hit it right there. Like, going into this game, I did not think Iowa – I honestly didn't think Iowa had much of a chance. Iowa doesn't typically match the speed of the SEC. Most teams they play, they don't. We're not gonna outrun them. They're gonna be a lot faster than us on the field. Iowa kind of lives or dies by their line play, dominating the line of scrimmage. And I thought Mississippi State might be a bad matchup for that because their defensive line was as good as advertised.
Yeah. They were freaking incredible, man.
Push them around basically, and so I was worried this game would be ugly. Iowa wouldn't be able to do what they normally do. The first couple possessions, you kind of saw Iowa trying to establish the line of scrimmage. We couldn't do it, and I thought, here we go. Yeah, then the blown coverage where Easley goes for 75 yards, which I think was Mississippi State's longest play allowed from scrimmage of the whole season. And they play Alabama, so that tells you something. Yeah. That was a complete shock. And that turned the whole game for the first part there.
And real quick on the 75-yard touchdown pass, what I thought was interesting about that is Nick Easley's deceptively fast. I mean, that kid runs like a low 4.40s, according to reports. Obviously, we'll get that confirmed at the when they do the pro day and whatnot. But he was getting like very close to actually getting taken down at the end. That one cornerback just kept gaining on him over the last 30 yards. Like, oh crap, he might actually not make it all the way in.
Yeah, if that had been 5 more yards, I don't think he would have made it.
Yeah, I think that just speaks to like Mississippi State's speed and whatnot. And dude, I completely agree. The offensive line, I was worried about how they matched up with Mississippi State's defensive line, and the Mississippi State defensive line just crushed Iowa all day. I mean, the fact that Nate Stanley actually had a little bit more time in the passing game was truly remarkable to me. I'm actually surprised he was able to get as many passes off without being under pressure as he was, and he handled pressure for the most part pretty well. I'd say outside of the triple coverage interception, that was one of his best performances of the season so far, of just managing the game, not screwing it up, and making the right play. I mean, the Nick Easley touchdown, that reminded me of the Penn State TJ Hawkinson play where he just blown coverage, TJ Hawkinson wide open, and just throws it over top of him and misses. And that's the kind of play he hasn't made throughout the season. So it was awesome to see that performance from him.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, Stanley seems to always, every game, he has at least that one boneheaded throw where you just, the guy seems like he'll lead you to believe that he's on the next step to becoming the next level type of player, NFL ready kind of quarterback, and then he'll make a throw like that where you just think, why are we really forcing that in there? Triple coverage, stared him down the whole way. I mean,
Yeah.
easy read for that defense.
It's literally every single game for him. If he can eliminate those mistakes, I feel like, I mean, I talked a little bit about this on Daryl Gold, but I feel like if he can continue to improve, he has the arm talent. He makes, 75% of the plays he's making are NFL level throws or plays or reads. But you're right. It's one or two plays every single game. Then they're not like, oh, I made a bad pass. It's like, oh, I threw the ball right to this guy who was standing there just waiting for me to throw it to him. And now this guy returns it to the 3-yard line and gives the other team great field position. Like, it's not even like his mistakes are just they're tiny mistakes. They're big and very game-changing mistakes. And that could have been very well what happened today, but obviously the defense was able to come through.
Yeah, I mean, no, that interception was straight up. It was, he was staring down his receiver, didn't even see the defender, and threw it right in there. It was, it was something he's going to look back on, I'm sure, when they review this game tape and think, that was a horrible throw. I should not have made that. And, he can certainly clean that up. That's correctable mistakes going into his senior season. Hopefully they can, take that next step and clean that up.
Absolutely. So I'm assuming you're pretty excited about Nate Stanley coming back for the 2019 season?
I'm totally excited. I mean, I'm not one of those on the everyone's favorite player is always the backup quarterback.
Yeah.
On Twitter, you always read the time for Peyton Manziel to come in kind of thing. And I roll my eyes at that stuff. Stanley has proven himself. He's a very capable quarterback. He's the kind of quarterback we need here. He can lead this team. Having him come back for a third year, senior season, it's huge. Anytime any team can get a quarterback to come back for a third year like that, that's, he's going to know this offense in and out. He's going to know what he needs to do. He has the experience. He can correct some of those bad reads that he does for some of those bonehead throws. He can clean some things up, like his pocket awareness isn't exactly the best, stuff like that. I'm sure the NFL probably would like to see him, do better at that. But the guy's solid. He's a solid QB. He's exactly what Ferentz wants. So,
absolutely, and I'm hoping that Brian Ferentz does a better job of opening up the offense. I think we saw it in a few games this season where they were willing to open up the offense and just have more of a vertical attack, and they have the playmakers there that they haven't had in the past few years. Ihmir Smith-Marsette, very clearly a burner, the kind of guy who can take the top off of defense, and you didn't see that happen a ton on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, you saw the explosiveness in the special teams and whatnot. He was, the kick returner of the year in the Big Ten. Obviously, very talented there. And then Brandon Smith. I mean, I'm shocked that they don't just throw the ball up to him, because if he doesn't come down with it, no one's coming down with it, because it's incredible watching him, make some of those amazing catches, and they didn't utilize them in the way I thought they would over the course of the season. I think that's something I'm really interested in seeing next year, is them maybe open up the offense a little more, attack it vertically, be willing to utilize they'll be juniors next year, and get them more involved in the offense.
Yeah. I like Ihmir Smith-Marsette and Brandon Smith. Like you said, I think they have potential. Smith-Marsette's got blazing speed, something Iowa doesn't normally have. The few times this year, if you look back, that they do try to go deep to him, it works a lot of times. I mean, I know Stanley had some issues early on with his connections and things like that, but once he's on target, a lot of those deep passes to Smith-Marsette did work. And Brandon Smith, to your point, he seems like he'd be a better, more jump ball type receiver. And even today's game, if you look back on it, a lot of his passes were kind of low, coming back on the sideline kind of thing. And you can utilize him better, I think, to get more jump balls, I think, throwing toward the end zone type thing.
Absolutely. He did make a really good catch, though.
What was that? Sorry.
He did make a really good catch, though. I mean, that one, I can't remember, it was like on third down, and Stanley came at him, threw it low. I thought it was a really good throw by Stanley, actually, to get low enough so the defender couldn't come over, and then Brandon Smith to get that low to actually make the catch. And that's the kind of stuff that they need to trust in the receivers more. I mean, I feel like the way they play offense is the way I play Madden offense. I'm scared to throw interceptions, and so I do a lot of drag routes, a lot of short passing attack, and that it's fine. It'll keep you close in the game, but sometimes you got to, be willing to stretch the field. And I think Kirk's done a good job of evolving as well from the, more conservative approach to getting a little bit more aggressive. We saw that in that fourth down attempt, which, for the record, in hindsight, it worked out very well. At the time, I probably wouldn't have gone for it, but we got a touchdown a few plays later, so that worked out well. But it'll be interesting to see him kind of get a little more aggressive next year. And I think
the Casino Kirk or New Kirk.
Yeah,
I was saying the same thing. I think I tweeted. I was like, "You kick the field goal here. You take the points, especially in a game like this."
Yep.
They go for it. My heart was beating out of my chest. Then wound up scoring, making me eat my words. I loved it, but that could have easily gone the other way. But
Yeah,
I love that. I like his aggressiveness.
I feel like I was just waiting for it too. If they would have missed that, man, Twitter would have been lit. Just hating on Kirk. How dare he do this? Like, why would he go for these plays and stuff? And I think you got to take the good and the bad, though, too. I mean, obviously, there's been a few plays where I don't understand why they're going for it. I don't understand kind of what their fake attempts have been like over the season. But when you have plays like that, Kirk basically made a very ballsy play, and it worked out well for Iowa. And obviously, they ended up winning the game, so it all worked out well. But everything's hindsight 2020, and I do like the more evolved, aggressive attack that they're starting to do now, and it'll be fun to see how that plays out next year too.
And how much of that, going a little off script here, you think, does Brian have some influence over Kirk and having him kind of be more aggressive on some of these calls? I mean, I know whether your opinion of Brian is positive or not, but it seems like since he's kind of been in the works, they have been more aggressive. So I don't know if Kirk kind of, Brian kind of leans into Kirk a little bit more on that type of stuff, or is that all just Kirk changing?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you. I mean, since Brian's came there, they've opened up. I mean, it's been a lot more evident this year with the fake field goals and some of those kind of bigger plays, but the evolution has really started a couple of years ago. And I believe I was, reading some information about just after the 2016 team that, got stomped in the Outback Bowl against Florida. They made a lot of changes after that year. And one of those was to, kind of look at the analytics and, do more Bill Belichick type of. Obviously, both of those guys are disciples of the Bill Belichick coaching tree, and do more of that intellect type stuff of being like, okay, it's fourth down here. Obviously, we typically would go for the field goal here, but analytics say that 52% of the time you should actually go for the run there and try to get the fourth down or get the first down on that fourth down play. And I think they did a lot of evolving then. It's been a slow process, and we're starting to see it come to fruition this year.
Yeah. With that, I know Kirk's big on his analytics now, which he kind of admits with a chuckle, but part of the game now, and I commend him for kind of diving into it.
Yeah, I do love his press conferences are so fantastic, where he basically he's willing to admit that he's an old guy and his old habits die hard, but he also kind of makes fun and pokes fun at himself. And I don't know if you listened to Pardon My Take, but he actually went on to Pardon My Take, which is just mind-blowing to me that he was even there. But I guess you can't teach an old dog new trick. Yeah, and he was funny too. He was cracking jokes. I mean, obviously some of their jokes, I don't know if he understood them all, but he did a really good job of kind of going with the flow in that.
Yeah, it's his dry sense. He's got a very dry sense of humor. I mean, he does have a sense of humor, but
extremely dry. Speaking of that, have you listened to Washed Up Walk-Ons? And for the record, anyone who's listening to this, definitely check out Washed Up Walk-Ons. It is a fantastic podcast ran by 3 former Iowa players, and I would say covers a lot of different topics from what we cover on this podcast. We are more well-rounded, focusing on all Iowa sports. They, on the other hand, do a really good job of giving some very player-specific opinions on what the football team is doing, and they do it in a pretty funny way, and they have some pretty funny Kirk takes too. But do you listen to Washed Up Walk-Ons?
I have not. I'm definitely aware of it. It's on my list. It's kind of like Netflix. Like it's in my queue to watch it. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but it's definitely something I want to check out. I've heard good things. I follow on Twitter and things like that, so I'm aware of what it is and definitely want to check it out. Yeah,
it's very entertaining. They've improved a lot too, just from the first week to the last couple episodes they've had. So I'm guessing a little bit. Wanted to touch on a few things. Obviously, AJ Epineza had a fantastic game, as he always does. It's honestly surprising to me he's not getting more hype. I was talking about potential All-Americans for next year, and one of the guys I noted was AJ Epineza. When you looked at the total stats or the total sacks in the nation, I believe he was 8th or 9th or maybe 10th in the nation in sacks. Obviously added another one today. And the top 7 guys, though, were actually All-Americans, like first, second, third team All-Americans. I think it's very possible that next year is an even bigger breakout year. I mean, obviously people saw how dominant he could be, but I'm hoping that Phil Parker is willing to put him in and actually play him 75% of the time and have him more against the run. And that way he can be more impactful throughout the game as opposed to his limited snaps that he's been playing this year.
He will. Parker Hesse graduates, and I love Parker Hesse, great leader for that team, solid player. But him graduating right there is going to elevate Epinesa. He's going to play a lot more. I think he grew a lot in the run game. You can see that. That was his kind of biggest knock on, was playing the run. But yeah, the guy is an animal. I mean, he had 10.5, 11.5 sacks in the season. He was a backup. I mean, that's the most in an Iowa uniform since like Claiborne in 2009. Claiborne was a first-round draft pick. I mean, the guy didn't even play half the snaps, and he's approached that territory of you can't block it. Like half the time there was a holding flag. You're like, I guarantee you they're holding Epinesa, because otherwise, he's going to get there. He's going to sack the QB. He's going to cause fumbles. He wreaks havoc. He's at least pressuring the QB on almost every play, or he's being held. I mean, he can't stop it. And next year we're just going to get more of that, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch. I mean, he was destroying Big Ten tackles this year, and the Big Ten, if they're known for anything, it's having solid offensive lines. Like that is the one thing the Big Ten is really known for, and obviously, and more typically, historically, playing a very conservative type of football. Obviously, that's changing a lot now. A lot of the offenses in the Big Ten are evolving into more, the RPO type, spread type concepts. But I mean, he was destroying all the offensive lines, including Wisconsin. He had a couple good plays against their All-American tackles, and so I'm really excited to see what happens next year. Another guy I'm kind of curious about, is Amani Hooker. I'm hoping he comes back. I think he ultimately will come back, mostly because I feel like he's not getting the hype that is needed to even be considered a first, second, or third round prospect. Safety's not really valued a ton, and as we've seen with Iowa defensive backs, they're not valued a ton in the NFL. I mean, they've gone typically a few rounds lower than what they probably should have, and I'm looking at obviously Desmond King, Josh Jackson, Micah Hyde, and they performed really well. So I mean, personally, I think this is a little biased. I think Hooker has a really great potential or future in the NFL once he gets into the NFL, but I'm hoping that the lack of buzz around him allows him to come back, and I think that'll really elevate the defense to have him playing again, and allowing them to also move into more of that 4-2-5 defense that has been relatively effective against some of the more extravagant offenses of the Big Ten.
Yeah, and you said it right with the word hype. I was at a party the other day with a group of people, and they were all saying, "Oh, Hooker's gone. He's going to the NFL." And I said, "I think he comes back because he doesn't have the hype. Like he's not on a lot of draft boards very high anywhere. But I think if he comes back next year, he will have that hype. I think going in that year, he'll have it. He has another solid year, then he's all of a sudden elevated on all those draft boards. He's elevated on everybody's list. I do think, like you said, the history of the defensive backs at Iowa, they haven't been picked as high. They're kind of undervalued, but they've all had successful. Desmond King was the top-rated corner, Pro Football Focus. Micah Hyde's excellent. Josh Jackson had a little rough start, but he's a rookie. He'll so they had some success. So I think some teams will read into that. He has that buy. He has that buy on it, and then he comes back. He has another All-American type year. I mean, watch out. And that Iowa playing to that 4-2-5 defense with that new star position, he is made for that position. So I just think it's great. And he's going to have his opportunities with a lot of the spread offenses that they play to make plays.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that maybe isn't talked about a lot is when you're practicing against like the first team offense in practice, he's going up against Noah Fant and TJ Hawkinson on a daily basis. That also is something that as a safety you can play kind of that hybrid dime backer type of role. To have that experience going up against arguably one of the most athletic tight ends to ever come into the draft in the last probably 10, 15 years. And then arguably one of the most well-rounded tight ends and TJ Hawkinson to potentially enter the draft. That's some good experience that you're working on. And then obviously going into the Big Ten, you have some strong tight ends and whatnot there. And so that'll be really good experience. I think he can also rely on and play in that dime backer role. I mean, as a Broncos fan, I would love to have him. I think he'd fit in really nicely there, and being able to play in the new NFL defense that's kind of taken the storm now.
Yeah, and I mean, he'll fit perfect in a defense in the NFL. All those hybrid slot guys are like all the rage right now. I mean, you want a guy who can come up and play in this run sport, and then a guy that's also quick enough to cover, like you said, athletic tight ends or slot receivers, things like that, which he can do. So he has a future in the NFL, I have no doubt.
Absolutely.
I think he needs that hype one more year, he'll get that, and I think he'll be better for it.
Yeah. One other thing, I obviously would love to talk about TJ Hawkinson, but I know it's pretty much I'd be very surprised if he comes back. And then obviously Anthony Nelson is getting, when you talk about him to people who just kind of watch the game, they don't really think of him as like a top round draft pick, but all the draft analysts have him as a top 40, top 45 prospect just for what he can do in both the pass game and the run game. And he quietly led, tied for the lead in the Big Ten with sacks. I mean, he had a really quietly very good season, and he's not getting a lot of hype from mainstream media, but I think draft analysts have him very high, and I would assume that NFL teams have him very high as well. But I think there's a chance that he may come back. Hawkinson, I think he's gone for sure. That's pretty much inevitable. So wanted to get your thoughts on that. Whether you think Nelson will be coming back.
I think Nelson could come back. I do agree with you. There's even the start of the year, he actually was on. I saw him on some draft boards. People mentioning his name, which, yeah, to your casual fan would kind of shock you because he doesn't seem to make the big plays. I mean, he doesn't do the strip sack fumbles or interceptions or block punts like AJ Epinesa.
Yeah.
But Nelson is as solid as it gets. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything more out of him. I think he comes back. I don't know. I haven't really looked into whether did he graduate early or things like that. Sometimes play factors.
Yeah.
My gut feeling is he comes back. Hawkinson, yeah, I think he's done. He was big on, I don't want to talk about it till after the bowl game, my decision and this and that. Usually that indicates it's because he doesn't want to say I'm gone and be a distraction. So I think he's gone. I think his stock's as high as can be right now. So
yeah, honestly, I feel like it almost, and I understand what he's doing there. And Hawkinson seems like just a really down-to-earth, small-town kid. When you come from a 3A school in Sheraton, you're going to be typically those type of kids are going to be more down-to-earth and focus on the goal at hand. But honestly, I feel like him not declaring for the draft was actually almost a distraction in itself. We don't know if he's going, so the question just kept coming up: are you going? Are you not going? And he was saying, "I don't know. I'm still figuring out. Just give the damn answer at this point." But I'm at least now that it's over, we'll probably find out pretty shortly whether or not he's gone. What are your thoughts on just the team in general this season? I mean, personally, I feel like 9-4 is a solid finish. One of the better ones Kirk's had in his career. Typically, in the 8-4, 8-5 range. 9-4 is solid. I think they're going to probably be ranked when the final rankings come out. Probably finish the high teens or low 20s. But to me, it just feels like, and the Outback Bowl is a great, ultimately, way to close out the season. Right? You want to close out the season on a win, but I feel like the season as a whole is a disappointment. I feel like there's a lot of what could have been, and it's frustrating to look back and see all this talent be wasted in the same way that other teams of the past couple of years have been, the Ricky Stanzi-led team after the 11-2 season, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think a 9-win season as disappointing because, well, this is only the second 9-win season Ferentz has ever had, 2008 being the other one. Typically, if you think about it, I would say if the over-under at 8 wins, if you go over 8, I call that a great season. If you're under 8, disappointing. So, yeah, 9 wins, I would say, oh, that's a great season. But, yeah, you're right. The feel of disappointment, knowing what could have been. They lost so many close games.
Yeah.
Games that were close, but Iowa really should have won. They were in control. That Wisconsin game, they were in control that whole game. Mm-hmm. Penn State, that, defense got a couple safeties, a field goal, or the special teams touchdown, fake field goal. You felt like we jumped out to a big lead, should have won that game. The biggest reason why it was a disappointment was because the division was so open. You didn't have like an 11-0, 11-1, 12-0 Wisconsin team like you normally. So Wisconsin was down, and you're thinking this division's wide open, and they didn't win it. Northwestern was the team that came in and took advantage of that, and you feel like that should have been Iowa. So the biggest reason for disappointment, I think, is the fact the division was so open and we didn't get the divisional title. But 9-win season and winning a New Year's Day bowl game it's hard to be too upset about that.
That's a good perspective to have on it. And I think what you're sharing echoes a lot of Iowa fans' kind of feelings towards the season. You have that little bit of disappointment, but ultimately you got to look at the bigger picture. And like I said, 9 wins is pretty good, especially for a team that is recruiting primarily 2- and 3-star type of guys, developing them. We'll take the 9-win seasons. And I think the other thing, not to get too sappy on it, is Iowa's doing it the right way. And I'm not saying other people are doing it the wrong way, While there's a lot of teams that, maybe a little shady, maybe do things a little bit weird or behind the scenes, not exactly the way I would do it, not as morally correct, but Iowa does it the right way every single time. And when you get 9 wins, doing it 100% with as much of a moral compass as you can, I think that's pretty solid too. And that speaks volumes for the program, what kind of man Kirk is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm a Kirk fan all the way, so you know that.
Yeah, that's fair. pretty fair. As far as next season, obviously the Hawks are losing, I want to say 13 seniors. It might be 12 or 13. I can't remember the final number, but overall not a ton of super impactful players. And I say that with the hint of relativeness. Obviously, you're going to lose players every single year. You're going to lose starters every single year. Losing Fant's huge. Losing Hawkinson's huge. I don't doubt that. Nick Easley as a security blanket's huge. But outside of that, they're returning a lot of really strong players. They're returning their 2 starting tackles. They're returning, obviously, Nate Stanley. They have their stable of running backs, although I don't know if that's considered an advantage at this point because they really weren't able to get their feet under them throughout the year. And then most of the defense is returning. You have the secondary. If a hooker comes back, you have a very strong secondary. I really think Hankins can improve a lot. Ojemudia showed a lot of good things and also a lot of bad things, but there's some good things there. And then Julius Brents has the making of a future stud at corner. And obviously you have Epineza and hopefully Nelson holding down the outsides of the line. You have a lot of good depth at the defensive line position. Even though you're losing, 3 seniors, there's a lot of really good depth that I think gives me some room for excitement there. What are your thoughts on next year's team?
Well, anytime you win a bowl game, I feel like you instantly think, oh, next year is going to be so much better, which, to some extent you could probably look back and show that that's true. Teams that win bowl games, kind of catapults them into next year. We get all of our pieces back. Having a third year starting quarterback back is huge. Your tackles are back, like you said. That defense, we lose some defensive linemen, but there's a lot of depth there. They're loaded. Secondary's got tons of experience. Linebacking core, tons of experience. The tight end race will be interesting. Depending on Hawkinson's decision, but assuming he's gone, that's going to be a real question mark because there's not a lot of playtime experience, I guess, behind them.
They have 2 catches total, I think.
What's that?
I think out of all the tight ends, there's only 2. They only have 2 catches total.
Yeah, I mean,
Nate White has 2 catches, and that's it.
Sean Byer was hurt a lot this year, and he's been under the radar because he's kind of been locked under Fant and Hawkinson his whole career. But I think he's somebody they like a lot. Get through Cook. I know you've in previous podcasts dealt with the tight end position, so there's some talent there. They got some. They got 3 tight ends in their draft class, which I wonder if that's a sign they were expecting both tight ends to go to the NFL because they kind of got it. But I think they'll be all right. I think the receiving core's got some experience. Brandon Smith might be a good red zone target to kind of help, ease into the tight ends. So
absolutely,
next year can do some damage. I think the West is going to be open again. I don't expect Wisconsin to be dominant again. I do not expect Northwestern to go 1 loss again in the Big Ten. That was shocking to me. I don't expect them to do that again. Teams like Purdue are definitely on the rise. But it's going to be open again, and Iowa's just as good as anybody in the mix there to win that.
Yeah, I think a really big theme is that, it's not very top-heavy in the Big Ten West anymore, and the bottom's starting to get a lot stronger. I mean, Nebraska is going to be a lot better next year. Purdue is a really strong candidate for one of those graduate transfers. There's a couple of them floating out there for quarterback that, they could instantly elevate a program like Purdue, with Jeff Brom coming back. And then obviously Wisconsin's the big question mark. It depends on what they do at quarterback. I think you have Alex Hornibrook, who hasn't really shown to be the guy. Jack Cohn hasn't shown to be the guy, but they have a 4-star recruit who's one of the top recruits that they've ever gotten coming in at quarterback. What if he has a year like Jake Fromm, that kind of thing? That could really elevate that program. So a lot of question marks at the top and a lot of promise at the bottom. And then for Northwestern, I think a lot of it depends on what you do with Pat Fitzgerald. It sounds like he might be getting some looks in the NFL. I heard that he might be getting a ring from the Packers. I don't know if you've heard anything about that, but that'd be huge for the Big Ten and Iowa to have Northwestern lose him.
The Packers requested to interview him, which I'm a Packer fan. So hearing that, I would be excited. Interested definitely in having him. Plus the fact that he might lead Northwestern would be good for Iowa. He's a really good coach. He's the second longest tenured behind Kirk there. So I don't think he goes anywhere. I think even his comments after the Holiday Bowl, he said he's a Wildcat for life. He's not going anywhere. I doubt he takes that job, but yeah, I mean, you never know.
I mean, I guess if I were in his position, I mean, he's playing for he's coaching for his alma mater. Like he built that program into it's very similar to Iowa. I mean, they are very similar programs, and he has so much job stability that he doesn't have to worry about if he has one bad year getting canned. Also, because it's Northwestern, and the expectations are also just in general lower for that program, just because of kind of what they came from, and that little bit stricter recruiting they have to do with their standards for academics. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But overall, it should be a fun year next year. Iowa has a little bit of a tougher schedule. Some of their, the teams on their schedule are going to be a little tougher. They don't have to play all the strong teams on the East, so that's exciting at least. And they get a couple of them at home and whatnot. So it should be fun overall. Real quick, before we kind of end the pod, wanted to get your thoughts in general. Do you have anything else you want to say about the game? Obviously, exciting stuff. Anyone you want to call out in terms of who did really well or something you're really impressed by?
Yeah, I got a few players I just want to talk real quick. Nick Easley. I know you and I are both Newton guys, so Newton boy, I believe he was player of the game, MVP. He had 100. I think he had 100 yards, a couple touchdowns. Where would Iowa's wide receiving core have been if they hadn't found that kid and taken him in from JUCO? So I'm going to be sad to see him go, but I was pleased that he ended certainly on a huge note. Another guy I want to mention is Jake Gervas. I think he had a huge game. He's kind of an overshadowed guy. Hooker kind of steals all the thunder. Geno Stone coming up young. Gervas he had a rocky start, back and forth, start playing time and start time early in his career. But the guy ended solid. That gifted interception he got in the end zone was a huge swinging point of the game. He had the pass break up there. I think he had another couple dropped potential interceptions, but overall solid player, and I'm glad he ended on a good note. And also Miguel Recinos, the kicker, had another excellent game.
Yeah.
Nobody ever thinks about the kicker. The guy's reliable. He's not, Nate Kading or anything. I don't want to anoint him, but he's reliable. Won us that game, with the amount of kicks that he made, some pretty decent kicks. And one more really important thing, it's the least sexy topic ever, but Iowa really needs a punter.
Oh my gosh.
So position, you could see Mississippi State's punter and 70-yard punt. Then he had like a 55-yard punt with hang time. And then Iowa, Rastetter, if he could get a decent rugby punt, maybe it works. But we saw that backfire with the line drive rugby punt Mississippi State caught. But other than that, I mean, they were constantly the defense's field position was just sloping against him that whole game because Iowa has no punt game. And
he's bad.
A guy like Pierce needs a punter. It would help this team out. A punter can be a huge weapon if you have a good one. And Iowa.
Yeah. I think that says a lot about the strength of the team, though, too. The fact that we can call out the punter as an issue. And Rastetter has been really one of the bigger issues throughout the season. I mean, there's been times where he's averaging like 30 yards per punt. He doesn't really do any good coffin corner type punts. I mean, in the rugby style, honestly, is just the least sexy way to kick a ball. Anyways, it looks so rushed and unorthodox and unconventional and inconsistent, I think, are kind of the words I'd use for the way he's punting the ball. And yeah, that guy catching that ball was impressive, though. I can only imagine that thing was coming pretty hot, but that flipped the script for field position and could have really screwed Iowa in the long run. And yeah, that 70-yard punt by Mississippi State, I mean, Kyle Gronerwig was literally trying to sprint backwards and couldn't catch up to it because it was going so freaking far. Yeah. Thank God it went out of the end zone. Like, that was about the only good thing that happened on that entire punt.
Yep. No, like I said, nobody ever talks about the punter, but you regret it. It's one of those things you don't realize unless you have a good one, how effective of a weapon a good punter can be as far as field position, especially a team like Iowa that, they need field position. They need to win that battle. Ferentz talks about winning that battle all the time. A good punter could do wonders for them. And they haven't had one for years, I feel like. I mean, the last time Iowa had a solid punter. Ryan Donahue back in the 09 days. I mean,
it's about a solid decade. Yeah, I think especially for a team like Iowa where Kirk is very much predicated on doing the simple things right and play, solid special teams, strong on defense, staying in your gaps, that kind of stuff. To not have a punter really hurts that motto or that method. So I completely agree, and I agree with the Recinos pick. I mean, he had a pretty solid 2 years at kicker for Iowa. He missed a couple kicks, but the kicks he missed were tough kicks and some bad weather conditions. So overall, he had a good year. I mean, I think he was hitting 75% of his field goals going into today. Made a couple more, so I was going to bump it up, and he's going to be a career around an 80% field goal kicker, which is pretty good for someone he's probably not going to the NFL. He's not really an NFL prospect on radars, but that's pretty good for a walk-on. And then I completely agree with the Jake Gervais. He redeemed himself. I was a little frustrated early in the game. He missed 2 interceptions, and the first one was a little difficult. The second one hit him right in the freaking hands, but that third one was arguably the most important, and he got it. And I was like, hey, God, what a good time to actually come up with the ball. So I completely agree with the players of the game. Obviously, love Nick Easley. I think talking to his brother, we're going to try to get him on the podcast too. So that should be fun to talk a little bit about his story. And obviously, I would say it's told a lot because it's very interesting, his process to getting to Iowa. But I want to delve more into his work ethic and the stuff that he's doing off the field, and also as he prepares for the NFL draft. And not likely to be a guy drafted, but I think one of the announcers made a really good point, something I've been talking about. It's easy to make the comparisons, but they talk about him potentially being like, he's a very New England Patriots type of weapon, that slot receiver type of guy. And I think it's easy to make that comparison when you're 5'9", white, and quick. That is very much a New England Patriots receiver, and I think he could fill a role in some offense in the NFL if they use him right.
Yeah, everybody compares him to like a Wes Welker type guy. I agree with that. I think he could find a place. It says a lot about him that he was Stanley's security blanket kind of the past couple of years. And typically a tight end, you would think of being a security blanket, and Iowa had the 2 of the best tight ends in the whole country, but yet Easley was still the guy that Stanley kind of went to. So I think that says a lot about him, the trust he had in him. He had great hands. He was a tough kid, deceptively fast, I think. Not blazing speed, but I think he could have a shot. He could carve his place for himself in the NFL.
Absolutely. And actually, the deceptively fast thing is interesting. I'm curious to see what he does at the pro day and how fast he runs, because pretty sure he's not going to get invited to the combine. But one of the things his brother said, he set the pro agility record for Iowa, the 3-cone shuttle record. I'll have to pull it up at some point, but he set some program records for more of the agility and lateral quickness type of things that are associated with those slot receivers. So some good stuff. I'm really excited to see what he does. But Jared, thank you for coming on the podcast, man. I appreciate it. I know it's New Year's Day. Obviously, you have a family you're taking care of, and you've been busy for the last 4 hours watching the game. So I appreciate you taking another 30 to 40 to talk to me about the game today. And obviously, we'll definitely have to have you on, man. Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me. It's been fun. What a win. It certainly makes the new year, going to the new year, feel great. Hopefully the basketball team can carry the momentum here going to the Big Ten play. But heck yeah, man. Obviously, the basketball game was a little bit rough against Bryant, but that was a weird situation, man. They only had a few guys who were really healthy, and whatever, as long as they can pick it up against Purdue. First game in 8 days with the Christmas holiday and everything. They came out a little sluggish. They're banged up. They had some guys not playing against a smaller lineup type team, so they couldn't really use their size, free throw line and stuff. So I don't know. I wouldn't read too much into that. I'm more anxious for the Purdue game here coming up, which will be real test for them. So yeah, I mean, they have Purdue and then Nebraska back to back. That'll be surprisingly tough. So there's no easy route in the Big Ten this year. I'll tell you that for basketball. Yeah, man. It'll be fun. We'll have to have you on to talk about some basketball games later on. Jared, thank you again. Happy New Year, buddy, and we'll talk to you another time, bud. Thank you. Go Hawks.